6:30 on Monday, August 14th. This is the regular meeting of the East Bay Charter Township Board, and we'll call the meeting to order, and if all of you will join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we'll do roll call.
Bartlett.
Yes.
Lyle.
Here.
Cortade.
Which one?
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt Cortade. Here. Matt Cook.
Here.
Suzanne Cortade.
Here.
Mindy Walters.
Present.
Beth Friend.
Yes, here. All right, thank you. With that, we will review the agenda for conflict of interest. You see that we have on the board under consent, declaration of surplus items, which has to do with bleachers, Metro, AT&T right-of-way, permit extension, Parks Commission appointment, and Mitten Apartments infrastructure turnover. And then regular business before the Township Board, we have the emergency service budgets for fire, police, and ambulance. Does anybody have a conflict to declare? Okay, seeing no conflict, is there an approval of the agenda or anything added to the agenda? Did you make a motion, Glenn?
I make a motion
Oh,
to
okay.
approve the agenda. I was
Okay,
waiting to see
sorry,
what
I
else
wasn't
they
sure.
had.
I wasn't sure if I heard that right or not. Is there a second? Or, okay, a motion by Lyle and support by Walters. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, we have an agenda and we'll move forward. We are to the point of public comment. The public comment policy is on the second page of the packet. And Anne, do you have the rules?
Do not have that.
That's okay. We'll kind of wing it today. We have got a
Okay.
pretty small crowd, so we'll just say that if you'd like to deliver public comment, you're welcome to. Come and stand up at the podium, introduce yourself, and share your perspective with us. Is there anyone here who would like to offer public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on, and we'll try and find those for you, Ann. They must have walked away here somewhere. We have correspondence and reports, and in the correspondence and reports, you'll see we have some information just back and forth on the Conservancy 2% grant award from the tribe, as well as an update on the Mitchell Creek tracking project. And you'll recall that we had partnered with the Watershed Center and Garfield and the City of Traverse City with that. We have the newsletter from the park plan and Traverse Connect's second quarter growth barometer results and quarterly accomplishments. We also have the, which is basically the COVID funding alternative compliance examination. So that's basically the audit for the COVID funds. And that was completed by Raymond and filed with the state. We also have the assessing department's PA 660 results, which is their audit, formerly known as AMAR. You have the treasurer's report for June and July, and then links to the most recent planning, zoning, and parks meetings. Any questions?
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
There is a typo on the July treasurer's report under property tax. The JP Morgan Chase savings account was closed, and I must not have erased enough
Okay.
when I typed it up, so.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Savings?
General fund?
No,
No.
the property
Oh,
tax,
thank you.
the 166,662.99.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Ann, do you want to go over that?
Sure can. The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one board motion without discussion. Any member of the board, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent agenda be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent agenda, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single board action adopting the consent calendar. This evening, you have the board minutes of July 10th, 2023. Recommend approval. From the general fund, check numbers 18018 through 18096 were paid in the amount of $201,681.41. Checks number 5378 through 5406 were paid in the amount of $37,983.05 from the emergency fund. From the receiving fund, check numbers 2907 through 2908 paid in the amount of $729.07. The escrow fund, check numbers 1954 through 1959, paid in the amount of $45,083.36. And from the roads SAD fund, check number 113 was paid in the amount of $500. Two payrolls, the payroll dated July 2nd through July 15th, check numbers 7459 through 7551, totaled $55,548.66. And the payroll dated the 16th of July through July 29th, check number 7552 through 7555, totaled $57,967.44. Total payroll, $113,516.10, and total amount paid, $399,492.99. No proposed budget adjustments, and other items, declaration of surplus items, Metro Act right-of-way permit extension, Parks Commission appointment, and infrastructure turnover for Mitten Apartments.
Okay, very good, thank you. Would anybody from the board like anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay, would anybody, oh, sure,
Item H4.
H4, okay. Would anybody from the public like anything removed from the consent agenda? Okay, we'll bring that back to the board for a motion on the consent agenda excluding item H4, which we will place, we do have Damien here, so we'll go ahead and place that first under business before the township board and get your questions answered so he can get going. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented without H4.
Okay, support? Support. Okay, motion is made by Bartlett, support by Lyle. Discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, Ann?
Bartlett.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
S. Cortade.
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. All right, very good, thank you. We'll move to business before the township board, and with that, we'll take a look at the item removed from the consent agenda, which is the infrastructure turnover, item H4. Damien, would you hop up here? Sure. Well, thank you, I'm so glad for you to be here tonight. I appreciate your attending.
No problem.
Can you go ahead and go over this project? And I guess first I would ask Matt, did you have any specific question or just want to hear an overview?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of related, unrelated, but it was my understanding there might have been an issue over at another development in the township with some utilities. And I don't know if those had been turned over to the township yet or not. Some rework had to be done.
Yeah.
Maybe some testing didn't pass muster or something after the
Yeah.
fact. And just wanted to make sure that, if that was the case, that we were having that looked at prior to taking over the utility, so.
Yeah, well, Damien's very familiar with that. So
Okay.
what you're talking about is on another development. And we've only had that happen on one development so far that I'm aware of, but that was the mandrel testing on the sewer system. And that testing just showed that there were some areas of interest that should have been noted, or maybe, I don't know if they would have qualified to fail, but definitely would have been noted typically, and there were many of them. And so that is being reworked. They had options. They could have, with that development, they could have, instead of having all of the interior be public and the adjacent roadways, they could have just left the roadways public and then had their own system internally, and the developer did not want to do that. They weren't wanting to be in the long-term sewer game for an extended period of time. So they chose to redo the internal system of the sewer. That's not anything that was the township's doing by any means. As a matter of fact, the township and our engineer, to their credit, is the one who determined it and found it. And it wasn't anything on the developer's side either. It was a contractor issue, as they do happen. And, but I don't believe that's the case with this development. Is it correct, Damien?
Correct. This one has passed all the testing and seems good to go. We've looked at the record drawings, we've looked at the witness reports, we've looked at the testing of the water main for water pressure and the air test for the sewer for pressure of air pressure test is what we do for the sewer, and the mandrel test, and yeah, everything looked good.
Okay, well, great. The other development that I mentioned, that hasn't been turned over yet, and that's why
Okay.
there's been a delay in that one.
That was my only concern, because I know
Yeah.
that there was a push to get some of those utilities turned over just due to some of the timelines on construction. I didn't know if that was part of what had been turned over or not. And I guess my ultimate question was going to be, is there an issue with our process to, get things reviewed prior to turnover? But it
Yeah.
doesn't sound like that's the case.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of a little bit the opposite. We're really fortunate that they were able to determine that with our engineer, and that is precisely why we do have our engineer do the inspections. And recently, I have been asked to allow other engineering firms do the inspection, which I've said no, and for reasons I have specifically said no. But that's a really great illustration of why
Sure.
we have our engineer do it.
I did have just a question about, kind of the process after this gets turned over. Obviously, the Mitten Apartments development is, there may be some foundation work or something done out there, but mainly it's just utilities on the site, right? There's no structures out there now.
At this point, I don't think they have started building construction.
So I guess the question is if all of these utilities, pass their tests and inspections, and the township takes them over. I'm just trying to understand the process, and then a lot of work takes place on the site.
Is there any degradation
Yeah, is
of the
there any
utility?
risk to the township that something isn't caught? Is there a follow-up test that has to happen on those sections of sewer, at a later date after construction is completed?
There isn't. The utilities are in a 20-foot easement, so foundations are supposed to be kept 10 foot away from either side.
Yeah.
Usually that's adequate with the depth of the utilities. And then the township owns to that easement line, and so that's usually where it's stopped, and then the buildings will go in, and then they'll run the service lead connection from the service lead stubs that were left all the way up to the buildings. And that's on the DPW county side of things.
Okay.
So actually, in the perfect world, this is a little bit more like it's supposed to be done, like the way that the ordinance is written, for all of the infrastructure to be in and then turned over, and then they go about their building process. And one of the reasons why the board, we brought to the board, and the board has allowed me to sign a developer agreement, is because most of the time, that's not practical. Like, when they get out there to do contractor work, putting in that water and sewer, they want to utilize that contractor in other ways too, right? Putting the foundations in, starting the construction, which they can't do the other way because they can't get the permitting to fall in line appropriately. So that's why I signed those agreements that lets them co-build those. But this is the case where they've put in all of the infrastructure and then they're going back and building.
Yeah, I guess there's not a
Yeah.
perfect scenario. It's just trying to play out in my head, the risk that there is. Big trucks,
Yep.
Even not excavating directly next to the utilities or placing foundations on top of them or whatever. Wet soil and, maybe things didn't settle right and you've got a bunch of trucks driving back and forth for a period of a year to build a building. I guess the question was, is there any risk to the township that there's a damage that takes place during that time period? And, do we go back and inspect it in any way?
Well, I think the utilities are, and Damien, you would speak so much better to this, but the utilities are installed in such a way that they are, when they're covered up like that, and I know they take care, contractors and our inspectors, in making sure that they are backfilled with the appropriate materials. But once they are covered, they're set, are they not, they're,
Yes, they're quite deep, 5 and 6 foot deep at a minimum. So, and then that trench width that the pipe is placed in can't be super wide, so it's a native ground on either side of the immediate trench. And then from there, it's backfilled and compacted. So, yeah, I know what you're talking about with driving trucks and things over the top. But at that point, that's so high above it, it's.
No risk to it? Okay. Okay, that's
I mean,
fair.
anything had, it's, the risk would be like if someone wasn't aware it was there and dug extra deep and then drove trucks over it. That could be an issue, but.
Okay.
But that's pretty rare because, contractors know where that pipe is and they don't want anybody to mess with it.
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
it's turned over.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
At that point, then it'd be a contractor issue.
Yes.
But those are great questions because it's a complicated process out there, just, So, good questions. Go ahead, Glenn.
Just on the compacting, if a contractor's putting in sewer, because you get a gravity feed sewer, and when they backfill it, is there a standard with how much backfill they can put before they compact it, or can they just fill it and then run a big roller over it?
They'll put a foot of sand over the pipe and compact that first. That's the first step. That's the main thing that gets our pipe solidified in the trench, in that embedment area. It's supported on the bottom by the haunches, and then on top of that foot. And then after that, it just gets, they just place the material back in, and then compact. If it's in an open field, it's a different strategy for compaction than if it's under a road or a parking lot. And that's usually, you would need like maybe a foot, the top foot underneath the road, or maybe 2 foot if depending on the soils. That would need to have a lot of care and compaction taken, just so that you have a road that's not going to crack or settle. And then the pipe's so far deep below that, they're kind of two separate issues.
If they plan on not turning it over to the township, do they still have to follow those standards or no?
So if it's going to be a private system, not turned over to.
They're gonna tie into the sewer, but the pipe in the ground will be theirs, not turned over to township.
I'm not exactly sure how that would go with Eagle. I think they still need a permit through Eagle, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it goes to that same foot above the pipe, which really secures the pipe. But after that, I'm not sure if it's regulated or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I know we do have one development that's being built, the hotel, that has an internal system, and that's all Eagle permitted, and then, but we're only up to the road. Everything interior is gonna be their thing, and of course, we don't inspect that. And I will tell you, I know I sat through a meeting with a developer and Brian Souza going over the inspections, and this developer, and rightly so, wanted to make sure that they used wade trims the most efficiently, because it's an hourly cost to that developer when they're out there, and even a daily cost. So he wanted to know exactly what they had to inspect, or what they had to be there for, and what they could do to like compact that time and organize it most efficiently. And the water, it sounded to me, just from a layman listening, the water's a little bit more forgiving and didn't have to watch as much of the backfill, but with the sewer, there's a lot that they had to inspect and be there for most of it. So it just sounded much more precise to me.
Yeah, sewer's so dependent on proper slope to get it to flow. So water is pushed by pressure, so it can go uphill or downhill easier.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for being here tonight, Damien, really appreciate it.
No problem.
Is there a motion, and let's see, the motion suggested is move to approve the acceptance of the public water and sewer infrastructure for Mitten Apartments as outlined in the August 7th, 2023 Wade Trim Letter and Exhibit A, which details the improvements.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and support?
Support.
Motion made by Cook and support by Walters. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by no? Okay, thank you very much for being here, appreciate it. Okay, with that, we will move on to our emergency service budgets, and we do have the fire, police, and ambulance here in front of you. We have, and I want to thank them so much for being here tonight, because some of them had to rearrange schedules, and I appreciate that. Cole Rosa, one of our community police officers, Tony Posey, Kim, and you know he's the Assistant Chief of Operations for Metro, Kim McCann, who is the accountant for Metro, and Nick Lemkool, who, Nick, where are you there? There you are. I missed the blue shirt there. Nick Lemkool, of course, you know, is our medical director for the ambulance. So with that, I think that if it's fine with you, we'll go ahead and start off with Metro and go through their budget. And standard to course, then we have a resolution if we choose to pass that, and that begins 24, I think is what I've got. Sue, did you have 24 as well? For that?
I did not check, but we can confirm that through the draft minutes we just
Yeah.
approved.
Sounds good. Well, thank you. Yeah, wherever you're comfortable, but there is fine. Just make sure you have the mic towards you, whoever's speaking. I think he's giving it to you, Kim. You can even bend that just a little further over towards you, and then you can just give me a wave if you can't hear her, okay? All right.
Hello, everyone. So it looked like on page 51 of your packet was the start of our 2024 budget proposal. And on page 2, obviously, we have our, consistent with last year, mission statement, our vision, and our goals. And then starting on page 53, we highlight some of our 22-23 accomplishments, including the purchasing of various vehicles, the receipt of grant funding for grants that we applied for in late '22 and throughout '23, and those are listed as well. Also providing MABUS response. We're part of the MABUS for Michigan. We provided response to the Gaylord tornado and the Menominee paper mill fire. Both of those we did get reimbursement on wages for. Then we celebrated but held a remembrance ceremony for the 21st anniversary of 9/11. Then you can also see some information as far as hiring and then also training that we did as well. So then on page 54, some of the 2024 challenges, there's a 9.6 increase in the total taxable values equating to $547,000 to GT Metro. We did prepare this budget at the 2.75 mils, which is consistent with our previous year's budget, so we're not asking for a millage increase at this time. But it does not, so we will have a little bit of use of our fund balance. It doesn't adequately cover our debt obligations and other inflationary increases. We also, hiring is also challenging, recruiting and retaining quality firefighters. And we're continuing to try to attract part-time firefighters as well. And then, it says that also Metro's vision continues to have a minimum of 2 firefighters in all Metro stations by 2024, and we have applied. Have we heard back from SAFER yet? We have not heard back from SAFER yet on that. We have applied for the SAFER grant for that. So, and then that's pretty much the highlights. You can kind of read the rest on that. So on page 55 was our budget timeline, and at the bottom of page 55, it shows that our 2024 draft budgets at the 2.75 millage rate would leave us with a fund balance of $1,684,000. So, and then on page 56 is kind of the breakout by township of what the contribution to our budget would be. As you can see in the middle there, East Bay's contribution, which is a 9.34 increase, would be a little bit over $2 million of the total. And then on page 57, 58 is our detailed budget. Just a few highlights on there. Our biggest cost, obviously, is our personnel, which tends to be about 75% of the budget. This year did budget for a slight increase in supplies compared to the previous year, and that's mainly just inflationary considerations. And then in contract services, our audit fees are going to be going up, even though we've just retained a new audit firm, that they are going up, so I did budget for that as well. And then some increase in insurance costs down under other services and charges to, purchasing new vehicles, the cost of insurance is going up, so we have to budget for that as well. On page 58, our transfer to our public improvement fund of $455 represents money that we're transferring to a public improvement fund to cover debt, as well as we have a couple vehicle purchases. On page 59, you'll see noted in the middle of the page that we plan on purchasing next year one squad for $70,000 and the boat to replace our current boat. We would retain the motor off our current boat and just replace the boat itself. So, like I said before, at the bottom of page 58, this budget would be usage of about $90,000 of our fund balance. So it's kind of a break-even budget. And then we would only use just a small amount of our fund balance in the public improvement fund. So pages 10 through 12, or 10 and 11 are projected debt obligations for the next 10 years. Those are just estimates. We do plan on purchasing and have gotten our board's approval for the purchase of a new engine in 2024. I think you said that was... Should be in May of 24. But we do have debt payments that do fall off in 2024, so it's kind of a replacement. We kind of try to swap out our debt as much as possible. Pages 12 through 14, that represents our 10-year capital plan. That's just strictly an estimate of some future things we would need to do as far as vehicles and then buildings and lands, and some of that's just a strictly estimate, depends on what happens. And then, looks like we have also included in the packet 66 and 67, which is an example of the resolution that needs to be passed. 68 and 69 are our minutes saying that our board approved. And then there's the actual resolution on 70 and 71, which is our board's approval. And then it looks like 72 and 73 would be the actual budget by cost centers, which is just an abbreviated version of our budget there, so.
Yep.
Are there any questions?
That's great. And you mentioned cost center, and that's just because, as you know, we approve it by cost center.
Yeah.
Nope, that's a great overview. Tony, did you have anything to add to it? Okay, so you just put all the work on her, right? Okay. So speaking from the Metro Board, the budget went through the financial subcommittee and also then went to the full Metro Board and passed. Didn't have any issues with it. Metro had really worked through a lot of the personnel numbers and the capital numbers. And obviously, the change in the assessed value helped things a lot, so that was a good thing. Because it is very expensive, as you know, to keep these trucks out there rolling. So, yeah, Glenn.
No,
Did you have anything to add as a board member on Metro?
I think she explained it very well.
Okay.
And the board passed it unanimously, so then it comes back to each township.
Right. Well, good. So we do have that resolution, which
What's the number?
it would be 24.
2023-24.
And that commits us to $2,024,870. Is there a
I would
motion?
make a motion to approve budget resolution 2023-24 for Metro, for the year of 2024.
Okay, is there support? Okay, there is a motion by Lyle and support by M. Cortade. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, Ann?
Sure. Lyle?
Yes.
M. Cortade?
Yes.
Walters?
Yes.
Bartlett?
Yes.
S. Cortade?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes. Awesome, thank you so much for being here tonight, really appreciate everything. Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll.
Thanks for
move
your
this
work on everything.
forward For the public hearing at the September board meeting.
Yep. Mhm. Okay, with that, we will go over, Cole, why don't you come up and, I think you've probably met everybody, but just in case you haven't, come up and introduce yourself.
I brought all my notes. So.
Okay,
I'm Deputy Rosa. I'm the new East Bay Township CPO. I took Deputy McKinley's spot when he left us. So I've been here since about December and enjoying myself so far. So
and if you don't recognize the deputy's last name, Rosa, he is related to Karen Rosa.
everyone.
Yeah, and who was a long-time serving supervisor for Long Lake Township. Very, very nice lady. So we're happy to have you here. And he has a very nice family of his own and has been doing good work, working with our citizens on questions of speed and traffic and all kinds of things, right?
Absolutely.
So what we have in front of us, it's a pretty simple budget for the Fund 207, which is for our community police officers. We just basically bring in that millage rate, and ours is .26 and has been for a couple years. And then some liquor law revenue. And then where we have that spent is on the contract that we spend with the county. And you'll notice in like 2022, that was down a little bit, and that was just because we had a quarter where we didn't have a CPO, and so they didn't bill us that. So if you think of it as 2 officers, so there's 8 quarters, so it's, an eighth less than what you would have expected it to be. Yeah, and let's see, so we have that contract, and I have just escalated that just slightly. We do pay for half the phones at Station 9 for them, where they have a desk. Other expenses, that is the flock camera system, and that's the contracted amount for the second year. This is 19, there it is, 19,950, that we'll end up having spent in that first year. And 1,500 put in for some expenses under the safety equipment for the liquor revenues. So if you'll recall, this budget always has spent down some funding. So we did that some time ago. We didn't use it all at once, so we didn't drop it down and raise the millage rate way back, way up. We just kind of kept it at a certain amount and then eating a little bit of the fund balance at a time, which was appropriate. As you can see, there's some years like 2022 where we didn't have any, and actually we really wouldn't have expected to use much in 2023, but we did decide to do the flock camera system, so that'll impact us a little. Actually, what I meant to say was next year, we really wouldn't have budgeted to use very much, but just with adding the flock in, so we, would have normally expected to use maybe like 4,000 or 5,000 in there. But good news for you, recently have visited with the sheriff's office, who provided some preliminary feedback. Nothing formal, nothing in writing, no reports, no emails, anything like that, but just was talking to them about some other things going on, and they mentioned that they've had some good results with that flock system, and that they're excited to share the results with us when they come back to the township. So they are not, I heard them referred to as spy cameras someplace, and they are not, as all of you know, because you sat through the meetings. They are not spy cameras. They allow them to go back for documented reasons and look for things that would help on an open case or a criminal case. And so they've been successful in doing that, so that's good.
Was it fast enough to catch a picture of the person that ran over the one on 3 Mile?
I was gonna
Yeah.
ask the same thing.
That's the first question I asked too when they called to tell me about it. They said, well, when we don't know who it is, I said, can't we just, look on the camera to see who it was? And they actually said that they did do that actually, and took a look at some other cameras in the area to see. But I will let you know on that one, where that was hit, that would normally be at like a $1,300 repair, which we would be on the hook for. But because they've been new and because it has taken a little bit of time to get them out in the field and installed, that the sheriff's office, and I'm really appreciative to Under Sheriff Shea and Captain Clark were in touch with Flock and just reached out and some concerns, and the Flock representatives several of them were back to him very, very quickly and offered to cover that cost at no expense to us. So we're appreciative of that, especially since we're just getting used to they're just getting used to that system, and we're barely into the expense of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they just went live for us like maybe a month at the most. We just got training on them probably 3 weeks ago. And we just got some more responsibility with them where we can now go back into searching, all the deputies can. So they're gonna be super beneficial. A lot of the things, like I'll talk about, like the hit and runs and stuff that we've had in the past, this will help us a lot, where we can catch, just having a vehicle description, we'll be able to get a license plate, have somewhere to start for an investigation if we don't have any information. I don't know, again, any numbers specifically, but I will say probably about 2 weeks ago, I did have an arrest for a stolen vehicle that actually rang on a camera on Garfield at South Airport. And then I was able to, it's so instant that I found it right at South Airport in 3 Mile, so. It's helping, and we're getting people off the streets and getting people who have been inconvenienced by having their vehicles stolen. We're able to get that back to them, so. That's just the one that I've had in the last 2 weeks, and it's kind of interesting to see, so.
So we have had a request for someone who wanted to know the location of our cameras, and just so everybody knows, we don't have that. We don't have it written down. It's not a file that we have, so it's nothing that would be produced with FOIA. That's the sheriff's office and the company have decided on those locations. We've just decided on the number of them. You can, obviously, if you're aware, see where they are, but there is no master list of them, and not intended to ever be. They're just where they're located at, right? And anyway.
Yeah, and I think from what I've heard, the M-Road ones and the highways they're not functioning yet, but hopefully soon. I think they're waiting on permitting for that, so hopefully we'll have some more going soon on the main roads.
Yeah, that's held up with the state, I think, because we turned over all our documentation for the permits, but they just haven't gotten it quite done yet, so. Anyway, so with that, that's the budget before us for the CPOs at .26 mils. Does anybody have any questions on this? I will take a second just to mention the opioid funding, because you will eventually see like a small budget line item for the opioid funding. And Cole and I got a chance to sit down and talk about the potential of that, and we are getting not very much money, about $5,000, and that will change or could change based on the settlements and different ones coming about. The county's getting quite a bit, several $1 million. So there's the option, and I did reach out to the county to ask, are you having any programs where we could leverage and make our approximately $5,000 have more of an impact? But we've also internally talked with Nick and Tony and Cole and Zach via email and in person, just about some ideas that we could use with the opioid funding that we do receive, even though it's limited. So that'll be coming, back to you in the future, but, some ideas, and there's no real time that I recall on a deadline of when you use them. Obviously, it's not going to take very long to use just a couple grand, but we do have a couple ideas, and I think these gentlemen had some good ideas and some good input. Any other questions on Fund 207? Okay, well, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the ambulance. And Nick Lemcool is here. Nick, you want to take it away with kind of your overview?
Sure.
Awesome.
Hi, everybody. So we're looking this year to stay at 1 mils. We think with increase in taxable value, we'll be able to absorb that perfectly fine. Our run revenue continues to be monitored. Our call volume goes up, we're going to make more money, and we're kind of at that point now. I see a slight increase from last year, and we've kind of gone up a little bit every year, too. For our expenses, the wages are going to stay consistent with the full-time and part-time personnel. The overtime, which normally includes the 8 hours overtime each week for the full-time employees. And then there's a little bit built in there for our standbys that we do and secondary responses.
Just a real quick clarification. I'm not sure if I heard you right or wrong, but I thought I heard you say wages will stay as they are. It's really personnel level will stay.
Yeah, personnel.
Okay,
You
gotcha.
got me. You're right.
Okay.
Wages are planned to be increased slightly due to COLA and a continuous market improvement. I don't know those numbers on a market improvement yet, or market increase yet. Usually, our neighbors do an increase towards the end of the year, so we'll have that hopefully by December when we set wages. And then it does have a change for me to move from 48 hours a week hourly to a 40-hour a week salaried position. With the way we sit now, with our staffing level consistent where it is now, and hopefully it stays that way, it'll make it so I have better time in the office, and my hours will help with that as well. Operational costs, just like everybody, we see an increase in our supplies and equipment. We've increased our budget line items for that. We also looked at replacing some crew computers, some office furniture, and then with our dorm room renovation, we're looking at new beds and some new lockers and new furniture for that. All of our contracted services are going to stay the same. Our striker maintenance agreements, our EMS survey, patient satisfaction surveys, Acumed's still going to be our billing company. We're still looking at using ESO for EHR and then our ninth brain for everything else that we use. Our capital, it's pretty straightforward this year. We're looking at just doing the down payment on the ambulance we ordered back in June. And that'll be in January of '24, and then that ambulance will be delivered in December of '25, where the remainder of that payment's due. And then any construction related to the dorms is not factored into this budget yet, and we'll need to do a budget amendment when that time comes. I'm still working with our architect. They've ran into some discussions about fire code and what is the best, most cost-effective way to complete the dorm room project.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I recently have been part of a feed with other clerks that talked about large increases with Acumed. Have you seen that with contracts?
We signed a 5-year contract with them probably 3 years ago, or whenever, it was 2 years ago, losing track of time. So I have not seen an increase yet. They may when we go into our negotiations for the next round, but we're still.
They're talking like 30%.
Wow, I have not heard that, but we've still got a couple years left of our contract.
I'll just keep it on the radar.
Yep, we'll do.
Thank you.
On the dorm rooms, is the architectural problem the only holdup?
Yes, at this point, that I know of.
Thought at one time someone mentioned something about the health department and by adding the bedrooms or whatever.
They have issued a permit.
They have issued the permit.
So there was some discussion on the most cost-effective, safest way to do either sprinklers or firewalls or something like that, and they're trying to figure all of that out as we speak. That was the last word I got from the architect today.
2 walls and a couple doors.
Well, there's a whole
You
lot
would
more to it
think.
than that.
It doesn't take very long to get more complicated, I tell you. Look, when Sue and I were talking about the kitchen area, remember when the architect was in, it was like, what?
It can be much simpler.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be coming to the board soon, too.
Yeah. The 2024 requested budget, you'll see as Nick went over, the property taxes, which we always do as just a mill, and then we take it of the real taxable value, and this actually will be for the other budgets as well. But we do adjust that by a 1.3% on average of what we see, because it's not always the same amount. So historically, it's been about 1.3%. And if you can see, when you've looked, we run pretty close to that when you've looked at our projected or our actual, when you're looking through the financials. So we did not plan any grant awards, but we'll be looking out for those opportunities for sure over the next year, absolutely. Anything else you want to point out in the line items for the 2024 requested budget on 81?
I have a question about revenue.
Yeah.
So this was printed, or maybe not printed, but calculated as of June 30th, and the runs were about half of what was anticipated. That was really before we went into summer. How has summer been?
It's been pretty consistent.
Okay.
I mean, we won't start seeing the building revenue from July till October.
Well, right, but the runs have already happened, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So-
we've seen our normal summer numbers. I mean, it's been consistent with years past.
We actually had kind of an active January, you were telling me.
January was really busy, and then we kind of died off in February, and it's picked right back up.
So with that, it is basically, we've gotten to, we were talking about this earlier, Nick and I, we've gotten to a staffing level that we feel is very comfortable and fits just right for what we're trying to do and operate with ALS service in the township. And so there isn't any request for any staffing changes, only adjustments when we go to take a look at COLA, which we only have estimates right now of, and always keeping an eye on that market adjustment so that, we don't have people going to other agencies, and we continue to be an agency where they're challenged and happy and compensated fairly. So you will see some adjustments based on the fact that we now have that additional full-time person, so less of a reliance on overtime and also on part-time as well, but then you'll see that full-time number just pop up there. And we did not have anything on medical insurance yet, so we just put in a 10% factored increase and left all of the deductibles, copays, all the premiums. We adjusted the premiums by 10%. We left the deductibles where they were. And I think that is about it. Any other questions? Just one, that you'll notice like the fuel is bumped up just a little bit because we have the Echo. And do you want to tell us how the Echo's going?
Good, we've used the drug box on it a couple times since we've gotten it. It's gotten quite a bit of use, so.
Great. Also, we've, our buildings and grounds guy, Dan, who's paramedic, and we had mentioned to you before he started, we thought, we don't know if this will happen, but if he is working in the buildings and grounds and he gets a call, as long as he's, in something that he can stop doing and he can make that call. And that has happened about 3 times.
Yeah, he's covered 2 to 3 calls for us when our primary truck's at Munson.
So the first time he did, it was a Friday, he was working, got a call, and the firefighter from Station 9 grabbed the extra truck, and then he met that truck on site at the call, and then they were able to transport from there, so.
He grabbed the truck from
Or-
Station 9, and they drove in from
Okay,
us.
okay. Logistics.
The way it worked.
Yeah. So,
And it sounds like the hours are kind of flexing more, where he's more time at the ambulance than he is at the township, probably basically because of the contracts that we have with the other services.
Yeah, the lawn is working well. As a matter of fact, I expected a delay this week, and there wasn't any delay even, and just for some reasons that they had. And then the bathrooms are working well, too, so. Let's see, so with that, the millage is staying, actually with all three of the emergency services, we're recommending that they stay the same for the next year. And we're not asking you to approve these budgets right now, obviously, because we have to have the public hearing in September. But I guess I would request that we, and you could do a motion for this, or however you want to handle it, but that we schedule the public hearing on the emergency service millages for September, is that the 14th? Are we the?
No, it's the 11th.
11th, oh, that's
September
right,
11th.
September 11th.
I would make the motion that we hold the public hearing for the emergency services budgets on September 11th.
Or
Motion made by Bartlett, supported by Lyle. Hey, Nick, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here tonight. Supported by Lyle. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, that brings us to our second opportunity for public comment. If anyone would like to make public comment, please feel free to join us at the podium. And seeing no public comment, our next upcoming meeting is September 11th. So we'll see you guys here on that day at 6:30 PM. If there's no objections, we stand adjourned. And we're going to mark the calendar because it's like 7:25. Well, I will say, after a year of the township reviewing short-term rentals, this is